As movie fans, we want to know the crazy stories and impressive feats of filmmaking wonder that brought our favourite films and their greatest scenes to life, whether it's something that is obviously impressive from the outset or something so subtle that it passed us by. If we're lost in the moment, we won't question it. It's only afterwards that our brains start to whir, and we need to know, how do they manage to do that? I'm Cy for Whatculture, and these are 10 movie scenes with hidden tricks you totally missed. Number 10, Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Ark Shadow. Steven Spielberg's directing and Douglas Slocum's cinematography work on Indiana Jones make use of a lot of silhouettes and shadows to incredibly memorable effect. This includes lighting locations, characters and props. One particularly well shot sequence in Raiders of the Lost Ark is when Indy and Sulla locate the Ark and, hoping to get away with it before they're discovered by the Nazis, carefully attempt to move it out of its temple. Instead of using the intricately designed prop itself in order to better retain its silhouette, actors Harrison Ford and John Rhys Davies instead moved a cardboard cutout, and because they were professionals, they acted like the thing was heavy even though they were just moving paper by holding onto cardboard struts. It helped to show and frame the shape of the Ark, providing a much clearer silhouette for the camera and thus the audience, as opposed to the big bulky chest itself. Number 9, The Thing, The Blood Test. 1982's sci-fi body horror classic The Thing stars Kurt Russell and the crew of Outpost 31 dealing with an alien terror that can assume the shape of any living creature. The film is praised for its usage of practical effects and its paranoid, intense tone. Perhaps the most pivotal scene of the film, Russell's MacReady pokes a heated piece of metal into blood samples of each of the remaining crew to determine if they're human or not. The theory being that if they're the Thing, then their blood will react and try to defend itself. The scene slowly builds tension before the truth is revealed and the alien creature bursts out of the petri dish in Kurt Russell's hand. In order to achieve the practical effects of the blood animating, a puppet springs forth from a prosthetic hand that is extended from MacReady's sleeve, and body horror nonsense ensues. However, if Russell's hand had suddenly changed mid-scene, then the illusion would be broken. Audiences would have noticed the discrepancy between real flesh and prosthetic. Thus, for the entire blood test sequence, Russell uses a fake hand, whether he needs it or not, and it's all carefully shot. This way, audiences wouldn't notice the switcheroo. Number 8, Blood Diamond, The Tear. In the grand tapestry of the works of either Leonardo DiCaprio or Jennifer Connelly, it's fair to say that Blood Diamond isn't their best work. It's a fun little action thriller about tracking down an expensive gem, but it's not exactly the jewel in the crown of either actor's resumes. Still, there is one reason to remember it. Spoiler alert for a 15-year-old film, but a scene during the movie's climax sees DiCaprio's Archer calling Connelly's Maddie. Mortally wounded, he says his final farewells in a beautiful scene that two high-class actors really make work. Or at least, you'd think so, but the post-production team disagreed, and apparently Jennifer Connelly's sadness needed that extra touch. Rather than call a reshoot, why not call on the power of CGI? After all, this is 2006 we're talking about, crazier things have been done. Thus, the single tear that rolls down Maddie's cheek is in fact not a tear at all, but digital trickery. Whether or not it was needed for the scene will leave up to you, dear viewer. However, it's indisputably right up there with some of the most subtle uses of CGI in a film, and thus very easy to miss. Number 7, Star Wars, The Land Speeder. In the modern era, a lot of blockbuster movies use post-production to drop their characters into locations after being filmed on a bright green soundstage. On the flip side, they can also scrub elements out of footage, be that cameras, microphones, or whatever else isn't needed or desired. It's so easily done now that it's accepted practice. Not so much the case with classic movies of the past, and 1977's original Star Wars had to make use of practical effects and workarounds to achieve its desired effects. Famously, the film used a lot of models for its various ships and crafts, but Luke Skywalker's land speeder was a fully functional vehicle. Based around the chassis of a small three-wheeled car, the craft was often filmed from angles that would obscure the wheels, but from greater distances the vehicle was fitted with mirrored plates on the sides. Since the land speeder was driven around a big open space, it gave the illusion that it was floating, and production designers on the film even included a broom under the land speeder in certain shots so that it would naturally kick up dust. A wonderful example of beauty in simplicity. Number 6, The Matrix, The Bug. The Matrix, as you are all well aware, changed a lot about filmmaking when it landed in 1999. So much of the movie was memorable, and whilst some of the CGI effects of the original trilogy have dated over time, some effects still work because of the use of practical wizardry. One scene in particular that always stayed with me was early into the film where agents interrogate Neo. Using the power of CGI, they remove Neo's mouth from his face so that he can't scream, and, disgustingly, unleash a bug onto his body that crawls inside of his belly button. But it wasn't wasn't all CGI. The effects required some truly chilling visuals to hit home, including the bug wandering around inside of Neo's stomach, pushing against his skin. Instead of doing everything digitally, the production team on The Matrix built a very realistic animatronic of Keanu Reeves' torso, using the actor's body to create a cast. The bug inside of him could be controlled remotely to give it that squeamish look in both the implant and extraction scenes. If it gave you nightmares before, then looking up behind the scenes footage of the realistic headless and limbless torso of Keanu Reeves with the remote control bug inside certainly won't help. Number 5. A Beautiful Mind, Baby in the Bath. Based on the book of the same name, A Beautiful Mind is a touching and emotional story of mental illness and how it can affect both the sufferer and those around them. Both Russell Crowe and Jennifer Connelly won awards for their performances, and the film itself took home the Academy Award for Best Picture. As a drama, it didn't need much in the way of effects, and so most don't question how one of the film's most shocking scenes came to be. Suffering a relapse into his paranoid delusions, Crowe's Nash accidentally leaves his infant son in a filling bathtub. As the boy's mother rushes to his aid, we see the stomach-turning image of the child submerged in water. I hate to burst any bubbles here, but funnily enough, this wasn't just a feat of great acting on the side of the child. Director Ron Howard shot both the baby in the tub and the tub filled separately, and the two were combined in the editing suite. Seems a simple enough process, but it gets all the more complicated when the shot was filmed freehand, and so the footage was never going to match up one-to-one whatever they tried. Still, the film's editors did a marvellous job of producing something that is jaw-droppingly real looking. Number 4. Die Hard with a Vengeance, The Sign. The third Die Hard begins with a terrorist blowing up a department store and messing with the NYPD, showing he has all the power by making some pretty ludicrous demands. The police feel as though they have no choice but to comply, and suspended officer John McClane is placed in Harlem wearing a sandwich board sign with an extreme racial slur on it. Except that's the case for the finished film. The final word was never actually written on the sandwich board. During shooting, the sign actually just said "I hate" and stopped there. Not wanting to ruffle any feathers on the New York streets, the production team wisely decided that it was probably best to add the offending word in post. An extra benefit to this meant that creating alternate versions of Die Hard with a Vengeance for certain markets were possible. They could add whatever in that missing space, and thus I Hate Everybody seemed like a much less controversial version for television cuts. Number 3. Back to the Future Part 3, The Train Scene. Back to the Future 3 ends with a pulse-pounding race against time. Marty McFly attempts to return to the 1980s by pushing his time-travelling DeLorean up to 88 miles an hour using a fuel-injected steam locomotive. This exciting sequence is the perfect way to conclude the trilogy. It's important to note that due to the danger of the nature of the scene, some of the shots we see in the final film are actually reversed. Rather than have the train push the DeLorean forwards, it was safer for the actors involved to reverse the locomotive and have it pull the car along. This meant avoiding the risk of the DeLorean being pushed off the curves of the railroad. The train itself, the Sierra Railway 3, is strangely one of the film's most prolific actors, having a portfolio that contains dozens of film and TV appearances. It also got a kind of miniature stunt double for this final sequence. Regarding the long shots, the train was too impractical, and the last few moments of the Sierra pushing the DeLorean towards the canyon are actually large miniatures. The footage is partly obscured with CGI effects as the time-travelling car reaches 88 miles an hour, which, more than anything else, let the crew reuse the footage of the miniatures multiple times without audiences ever really noticing. Number 2. Jurassic Park, Air Duct Stunt. Hiring children to star in your motion picture comes with its own set of hurdles, such as rigid working hours and maintaining stringent working conditions. Your average Hollywood action star may well have to get through red tape if they want to perform their own stunts, but it's certainly a lot more likely than letting children perform those dangerous moments. As Jurassic Park draws to a close, our escaping paleontologists and company get out of the visitor centre's kitchen with velociraptors in hot pursuit. Climbing into an air vent, not all goes quite as well as hoped. One of the panels falls, and Lex, played by Ariana Richards, clings on for dear life as she nearly drops down to the ground below and becomes raptor chow. This shot naturally used a stunt double who, rather unfortunately, made the cardinal sin of looking right into the camera during the shooting of this pivotal moment. In the editing suite, the production team had few options available to them, and so with some CGI trickery, they imposed Ariana Richards' face onto the stunt woman's body. It's so perfectly done that no one would be able to tell if they didn't already know, and if nothing else, it actually makes the final effect even more thrilling. Number 1. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Illuminati Scene. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness offered a mind-blowing scene where Benedict Cumberbatch's Stephen Strange is brought before the Illuminati of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Audiences across the world cheered as they saw the on-screen debut of Captain Peggy Carter, the return of Patrick Stewart as Professor X, and perhaps most excitingly of all, John Krasinski in the fan-casting dream of Reed Richards. While speaking to Vanity Fair, Scarlet Witch actor Elizabeth Olsen took a lie detector test, and one striking moment left MCU fans confused. A photo of Krasinski was placed in front of her and she claimed that she had never met the man. In a further interview with Collider, Olsen admitted that she hadn't met a number of her castmates when making the film. Olsen stated that she never met lots of people in the movie, confirming that many of the actors did their work on different days and it was all spliced together. Considering the high demanding workloads of many actors these days, especially those within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's not all that surprising to hear that many often film by themselves. All of these many takes are then carefully combined to create scenes so fluid that we don't even notice. And that's the list. Let us know what you thought of this video down in the comments below, as well as any other neat movie tricks that you know about that other people might not. There are plenty out there after all. Make sure you like this video, subscribe for more, share it with your friends and hit that notification bell. I've been Cy for Whatculture, and have a good week.